You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy. All right, another Monday podcast recording. We used to never do Monday episodes, but I feel like the last couple of months, just with like working with people's like summer schedules, we're having more than ever. And it's probably the best way we can kick off our week. So
for sure.
Welcome to the show, Priscila.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
And on that note, I was going to jump into like good news with it not being my good news story, but I didn't want to steal my own thunder. Every show we start the exact same way, and that's with something that we call good news stories. So you can share something personal, it could be something about, it could be work related, anything that's coming to mind for you. And we like for our guests to go first.
Okay. Well, I have a really exciting one because I am fresh off coming back from our company-wide retreat in Colorado called Labapalooza. So twice a year we have retreats. In February it's virtual, but then in July it's in person. And so I am a buzz because I just got to spend a full week with the team, and there was so much collaboration, so much fun, so much partying. It was really, really an exciting time.
Was there music?
Was there music? There was I mean, we call it LifeLabs After Dark. So we do have like some good party situations. And this year we also started our Ollie Award. So Ollie is an owl who's one of our mascots. I should have prepped to have an Ollie here with me. But so we decided to create the Ollie Awards that are crowdsourced, not to be confused with the Dundies. These are really exciting awards that you actually want to win. And we also had a great celebration with good music there.
Ooh, that's fun. That's fun.
That sounds awesome.
I can go
next. If you ever need media coverage, we would love to cover anything with Palooza in it. Seems like a party. So
I was picturing like music festival vibes.
Me too.
You know, anytime our team gets together, it's all kinds of good vibes.
I bet. Okay, I can go next. Mine's short and sweet. So we have a 10-week-old little girl, and yesterday was the first time that me and my wife Tori were able to get away for longer than like a 2 to 3 hour stretch. So that was like a good there was definitely a mental hurdle for my wife to get over for being away for that long. But baby was with the grandparents. We were getting photos of her smiling. Aww. And we both like to golf, and so my wife and I went golfing, and it was her first time playing since having the baby, or probably like the last like 6 or 7 months. So it was fun. It's a good little getaway.
I was going to say, is Tori emotionally okay? That's a big, big jump.
The whole time she kept just going, "Oh, poor baby."
And she was looking at her phone.
Yeah. Should we call them? Should we text them? I was like, no, she's fine.
Oh my God, that's so real. I can make up for the short and sweet. I've got a few, and I promise I won't do this every episode, Daniel. I just feel like I'm getting caught up I returned last week. Last week was my first full week back from 2 weeks in Costa Rica, got married. I won't talk about it anymore. I've shared all of it on the pod, on LinkedIn. And so thank you. The personal news is it feels like summer. Because we had been in like wedding planning mode and then like just resting mode, and it wasn't like super hot in Texas, or at least Austin, Texas yet. And it was hot this weekend, and our girls are in camps. They're having pool parties. So it's like feeling like proper summer now, which is always cool. Work-wise, we're in pod catch-up mode also for me being out. And even before that, Daniel being on paternity leave. We also ratcheted up our podcast calendar. So we're dropping 2 episodes a week, which may seem insane, but we've tried this before. We had some lessons learned, and we have a much bigger team now. So we the point of all that is like we've got a lot of recordings teed up, hence the Monday pod. We've got, I think, 2 others this week, maybe 3 others this week. And it's always my favorite part of the week are these podcast recordings. So that's part of my work good news. The other part of my work good news is I have shared like my vibe coding journey, and I finally dropped my website with my personal website that obviously MPL is a huge part of that, but I'm also sharing some other kind of passion things that I'm going deep on personally. And I've gotten a lot of really good feedback, like some constructive feedback. Shout out to Regina. She was the first one. She was like, you need to add a photo, like put a picture of yourself on your own website. I hadn't even thought about that. So, and the bonus is I've got a newsletter coming down the pipeline, and I have 55 subscribers, and haven't really, promoted or really mentioned that too much. But that's all a lot of good news for me today, Monday.
I was cracking up at I don't know if it's like one of your friends from college, Steven, that commented on one of your posts. He was like, you have so much good news recently. What are you going to tell me next? That you're the Geico gecko? That you're going to save money on my insurance? What did he say?
So, Dimitri, yeah, he was like, next thing you're going to say is how you saved a fortune with Geico. I was like, yeah, because we're also pregnant, Priscilla. So unfortunately, with 2 teenage daughters, I don't know if Geico is going to give me the savings I need, but that was a nice one. Dimitri, shout out to Dimitri. He was I started my career in 2000 at Ernst & Young, and he was in my analyst class at Ernst & Young. So we go way back, and he's been busting my chops since 2000.
That's amazing. Well, my daughter just finished driver's ed, so there is a permit coming, and I can expect my car insurance rates to go up too.
Oh, for sure. God. How is that? How are you doing? Are you emotionally okay?
I am emotionally okay, though it is shocking. I am having that phase of like, my son also had his 13th birthday this past weekend. And so we were very nostalgic and reminiscing about how little they all were and now how big they are, though I may have traumatized them with some day of pictures. So we're going to skip that. Yeah.
That's funny.
I also have a 15-year-old who she drove home from Target last night, and everyone's okay. Everyone survived. So I feel you. I feel you.
That's what I have to look forward to. So I've heard the story, Priscilla, but not from you. What's your career story like? What led you to becoming now the CEO at LifeLabs? I feel like maybe somebody mentioned that you started off as a customer. Yeah, give us the full Priscilla story. In our recent episode with Helen Russell, the Chief People Officer at HubSpot, she said something that really stuck with me. We're in this wild, wild west moment in HR tech. Teams are testing tools, experimenting with AI, and all of it's happening at lightning speed. But the real problem, most HR tools out there are clunky, outdated, and frustrating. They're stuck in 2019, and they just don't support HR's role as the driver of team performance and engagement. That's why I'm excited about Workleap. It's a simple, AI-powered talent management platform that keeps performance moving with one continuous rhythm of pull surveys, recognition, and performance reviews. No spreadsheet limbo, no year-end memory tests, just the right conversations happening at the right time. And it actually works with the stack that you already have. Slack, Teams, your HRIS. You get value from day one. If you want to see what modern HR tools can unlock for your team, just head to workleap.com and book a demo. And if you want to get 10% off, don't forget to select the Modern People Leader when they ask how you heard about them.
No, absolutely. So it's really interesting because I've always been someone who wanted to I've never met a problem that I didn't want to solve. And so it's on the one hand, very natural that I ended up at LifeLabs Learning. And on another hand, not necessarily the part and path that I originally started with. So the bulk of my career at first was all in finance. So Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Barclays, a lot of investment banking, sales and trading, and then venture capital investing. So when I actually got to know LifeLabs, it was because I was in the market to hire someone to upskill my portfolio executives, right? Many cases as an investor, you have brilliant product people, but that don't have a lot of experience in managing a team. And so I was on the hunt to find a solution, ended up creating what we called literally the LifeLabs Learning HIT series, which was high intensity interval training for all of the leaders that we had. And I was hooked. I fell in love with the product and I was like, holy cannoli, where was this content and where were these people when I was going through my MBA at Yale or being trained by any of those global banks that had been the first bulk of my career? And met the founders and we started talking about, they're like, hey, we're probably onto something here. And now it's an opportunity for us to grow. We think we have some product market fit. We need someone to really help us with the commercial side of the business. And so I originally joined actually as the head of sales, then chief revenue officer. And within 2 years, I was the CEO. And it's been a phenomenal ride and best team I ever worked with.
I love that. I joked for a long time that I'm a recovering financial services HR executive, and so I was at Goldman Sachs. So don't hold that against me. But I know very well those analysts, new manager training, VP orientations, and I'm familiar with what Labs does, and it's that is like a real aha, like wow, like where has this been my entire career? And so that really resonated with me. But for those that don't know, and I think what I best know LifeLabs Learning for is your culture club. And I, to this day, always cite you guys as having the best virtual events. Like they are just so awesome. The engagement level, we do our own virtual events, and there's a lot of things that were inspired by what I saw and just the vibe that you create. Because a webinar is a webinar is a webinar, but like to truly capture learning in a virtual setting is really, really hard. And you all are experts at it. But for those that don't know and are hearing about LifeLabs Learning for the first time, what is the elevator pitch? Like, what is that kind of 30-second explanation of what you do?
Yeah, no, thank you for that space and for attending Culture Club, which absolutely everybody should as well. So LifeLabs Learning, we train managers and leaders on people skills, right? So basically we go out and we research thousands of managers and we find what are the common behaviors that those folks have. We then identify what are the smallest changes that will lead to the biggest impact. And then we turn that into what we call teachable units and tipping point skills that can really drive high impact, immediate results. So for us, this notion of how can we make it applicable? And I always tell the team that we're the best at translating the best of academic research in industrial and organizational design, behavioral economics, cognitive psychology, and then the empirical evidence of what does it look like for managers across some of the world's most innovative and successful companies, and what is at the intersection of both of those, and how can you be a manager that behaves as such as well?
I for sure would have loved some LifeLabs training when I was in-house at any of my past companies. Okay, so I want to talk about, well, I guess I'll start by saying every conversation that we've had on the podcast in the last 2 months, we've talked about AI. Mm-hmm. Like it's inevitable. Like we can't get around it. It always comes up. And, with everybody turning to like AI generated training or chatbots or using their chat GPT or Claude as like their personal coach, their manager trainer, like giving them the frameworks. There's this argument that we've seen online that the human touch is becoming less necessary. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure this is something that you guys hear all the time, being in this space. And so I guess first question, like, what's your reaction to that statement? And then the follow-up, what do you think can't be replicated by AI?
Yeah. Well, I love that question, though. I have to say, I consider it a win that, I made it until noon today without having to say AI out loud. But here we are.
I've tried to find new ways of talking about it without actually saying AI. It's really hard.
Though I have to say, so out of our retreat, one of the things that I was sharing with the team is like, first, I'm super excited. Like it is incredible, sort of the amount of coverage. And I think that the excitement that tasks of the future are going to have to do much more with human skills than repetitive things that we had to do. So for example, if we think about how AI now can accelerate how quickly we can find out research about either one another or any particular topic, it's still the case that somebody at the end of the day has to review that output and understand, when is it that I put all of the 15 pages that may have come back from this particular query that I did in front of you? And when is it that here are the most critical areas, and that's how I'm going to be most persuasive and insightful into moving the thing forward? So I was talking to the team about how, instead of calling it artificial intelligence, I'm now going to call it, and kudos to my chief people officer, Stephanie Schuler, for bringing that to me. Because she's like, Priscilla, you keep calling it an intern, so it should be artificial intern instead. And I'm like, yes, I really like that, because that's what I feel like. It's that now every single human everywhere has been equipped with an artificial intern to help really leverage and accelerate all of the things that you yourself want to achieve in the ways that are most creative, insightful, and productive. So I'm very excited for the coverage that it creates. Like Stephen, you were sharing earlier about some of your wins and like creating your website and, kind of like launching so many of those things. And I bet that AI can help you, whether it is by touching up whichever picture you decide that you want to put on your website, or even giving you an entirely new look. If you want to be, Stephen the Superman, or whatever it is that we may want to do, like that is going to be much faster, and it accelerates a lot of creativity and energy around how humans deploy work themselves. But when it comes to the conversation around learning, what I find really interesting is that first we need to actually level set that when it comes to practices at work, to me, the battle has never been in the learning as much as been in the doing, right? So Stephen, you were mentioning your past at Goldman Sachs, and we're not going to call anyone out here, but I mentioned finance because it's a field that attracts some of the brightest, smartest, most capable people you will ever have come across. Those people, by and large, know all sorts of things. Some of them think they know everything, but most of them know lots of things empirically, and they are really, really, really good at their jobs. And yet there are still challenges, and yet there are still blockers, and yet there is still conflict, and yet people do burn out, and yet like projects sometimes don't go as planned. And why is that? Is that it's because not just people don't know what the right answer is, but it is implementing or doing the thing that you may know is right in the moment when your amygdala gets hijacked and your heart is beating a little faster and you're sweating a little bit, and there's another human on the other side that's going to respond in a way that you don't necessarily expect. That's the proof of the pudding, right? Is, can I actually behave in the best practice way when a bunch of factors are going to be against me, or when I may not have had the preparation to actually do this thing? So I think that AI is going to be phenomenal at helping people get access to learning that they need to very quickly get at their fingertips. And so that's really exciting. And it can be something that's going to help you practice in some ways. But I think that the unlock and the aha moments that happen when you actually have to face your own emotions, your own fears, and sort of like the fact that there is a human who may be relatively unpredictable on the other side, really raises the stakes of that emotional practice, right? So it's one thing for me to be like practicing a difficult conversation with an AI when I know that if I fail, there's very low stakes. And it's another one to have that conversation with a human when I know that the response is going to really impact my credibility, trust, and know-how, etc. So I'll give you one example. Sorry, I know you wanted to say something, Stephen. I can't.
No. This is perfect. Keep going.
I was going to say, this debate reminds me a lot of when people used to say, like, what's the value of business school? Is it worthwhile to go to business school, right? And they say all of the business education that you could possibly want already exists in the world. And you have access to LinkedIn Learning and Coursera and all of those other things. And I will tell you, yeah, you could learn decision analysis and macroeconomics and, any other kind of like marketing discipline easily online. But the thing that sticks with you, it's like the time when I had to go into this particular class and a professor asks someone a question, I raise my hand, they call on me, and I start doing what I just did, which is I talk and talk and talk and I don't stop. And they cut me off, and 200 people start laughing. And you're like so mortified, and you're like, my life is over. Where am I going to go now? But you have to show up to the next class and to the next class. And you have to raise your hand again, because if you don't participate, your grade is gonna end up being impacted. And you also care about the social capital and the relationships you're building with these people. And so the next class, I was traumatized, and I sat all the way in the back of the room. 3 classes later, I had made my way back to the front. But that emotional journey and those scars and that courage and knowing that, you know what, that didn't kill me. And even if I have 200 people laughing at me because I was too verbose, I can now correct it, and I can be aware of it, and I can make a change. That is something that's very hard to do when it's just you and AI or on-demand learning.
So I promised before we hit record, Priscila, that this would be the easiest podcast you've ever done. What I didn't add to that is we will probably go off script, and I hope that's okay, because I'm already being pulled off script just by what you shared. And my mind is there. I have a lot of thoughts that have bubbled up. One thing, because Daniel and we talk to people leaders most weeks every single day, but at least 2 or 3 people leaders a week. And I still haven't heard anyone say that because of AI and all the things that AI, the superpowers it gives us, that we won't need time together in person. Like I haven't heard anyone say that. Like literally nobody is saying, oh, now we don't even have to spend time together. I also haven't heard from any people leaders that learning, in-person learning is like no longer needed. Like literally no one's saying that. Like I think how we use our in-person connection time and how we use our in-person learning time, it's changing, it's evolving. And I think that genie's out of the bottle. COVID had part of it. AI is having a huge part of it, but like these things are still going to be required. And I say that because I do believe in a scale to one future where these AI tools allow Stephen to have a super personalized coaching and learning experience that is tailored to my competencies that I'm strong at, the competencies that I'm developing, my real-time interactions that I'm having in one-on-ones, the feedback I'm getting from my pulse survey. Like, I just believe that, Daniel can have his version of that. Priscila can have her version. And like, what is possible is super, super, super exciting. But let's use the vibe coding example. Like I have no coding skills. I am a former practitioner turned entrepreneur that targets HR. I always had to hire engineers in the entrepreneurial endeavors because I can't code. I built my website 100%. 0 engineers were involved. I built the front end, I built the back end, I built all the APIs, and I set it all up. And it was, it blew my mind. And that's a superpower I now have. I still did demo days with about 12 different people, in person, because I needed a human component. I needed feedback that I didn't feel I could get from, AI the way I wanted to get from AI. So I did what I do best. I know to do. I reached out to people that I care about and I brought them into the process. They gave me ideas. They gave me feedback. And I think that holds true to like all the other types of learning. And, you said something earlier that really hit for me. And that is, the tipping point skills that drive high impact. It's like, I feel like the AI can tell me what those tipping point skills are, and get super personalized for me individually. But I am not, at least where it's at today, convinced that like the AI and my bots will help me literally help the scales tip to where like I'm now able to drive high impact with these theories and concepts and things that I need to learn to raise my game to the next level. So those are, I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts or reaction to that, because that's just what bubbled up in, the last 5 or 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts and responses to that?
No, I definitely do. And I think that that's exactly it. We're on the money in that AI, again, it accelerates the MVP. It accelerates you getting to like the drafts that you can present to others. But even in the example that you were sharing, when you then had all of these human folks that you trust help you, what you were doing is precisely exercising what I believe. And I think there was a piece in the New York Times that talked about this as well. So it's not all just how I'm thinking about this, but it's kind of, again, what will be left, right? And taste making is one thing. So this notion of who make the choices around what is considered good output kind of out of it. So this is where, back to your comment of like people I trust, I assume that when you say trust, what you're implying is their competence and their ability to actually exercise judgment in a way that you find compelling and persuasive, right? So that will be
Absolutely.
left. Stakeholder management, right? Like that will be left. Like who needs to see this when, and how can I get the best result? And what does it mean to build collaboration and alignment? And who are the kinds of people who need to be a part of either the original prompting process? Because again, bad data or prompts in, bad outputs out. Like who is defining what is the audience? What are the constraints? What does success really looks like? What are the obstacles we're going to be up against? And then of course, what are the next steps that we're going to need to take? All of those things are still going to be a lot of stakeholder management that requires the humans to be in the mix. And whether it is, again, a team or a solopreneur, the end of the day, those choices are the things that really set us apart, right? Like, and I think that that's what folks forget is AI is basically kind of like giving you the option to canvas all of the experience of all of the humans that have put their data out there publicly, or if you have a private tool, also private data sets. But it's kind of the average of all of the things. And honestly, at LifeLabs, we're not in the business of common practice. We're in the business of best practice. I don't want the average, or I want the thing that's going to really be contextualized to my team and to our values and data sets so that it can yield kind of like the best output. So when it comes to HR, the conversation is really, again, what is the culture that you're trying to create? What are the values that your organization has? Are there specific trade-offs that we're willing to make because they matter to us, whether it is from because we're a B corporation or because we have a mission that aligns with a particular type of impact. And every single one of those components is going to change your output fundamentally. And this is where, again, that calibration amongst the humans is going to be so important so that you can really see whether that output, makes sense or not.
Love all of that and agree. The last thing, segueing us back to the topic, is I do believe that this will take time, and I feel like there's the adoption. We're beginning to see more and more adoption, but I think there will be laggard industries and some industries where like AI just doesn't either work or have the same impact. And I feel like I'll keep names anonymous because I think we use the same names in a lot of episodes, people that are close to Daniel and I. But there are a couple of people that are really close to us, and it is they're not using AI like Daniel and I use AI. And I feel like Daniel and I have been like, you need to use AI. And they're like, nah, it doesn't work. In my industry, it doesn't work that way. And, you mentioned financial services. Like, I think I can see, I can see conversations where people are like, oh, well, the way we do investment banking, the way that we do trades, like AI can't do the things that you're describing. I'm not so sure I agree with that. But I think that is the culture and the trade-offs that you were just talking about. It may not be worth it yet in some industries to make, those decisions. And I think that that's okay. And, a lot of these teams, are going to need help. This help they've always needed. Like, where was LifeLabs Learning, last year, 10 years ago? But they're also going to need, it's like a transition of sorts. It's like, how do we get from one way of operating with our managers to another way of operating with our managers in financial services, or insert industry that might be a laggard. And I think that there's like a huge opportunity there as well. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is I don't view these things as mutually exclusive. The type of work you're doing and how AI is being harnessed. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that before we move on.
No, 100%. Like, if anything, I kid you not, like, I've been giddy because I'm like, guess what? The skills that are going to be left are the ones I teach. I'm so excited.
And so to just keep us moving. So for the do-it-yourself teams that are out there, that are like, what, we still need to double down on in-person learning. This is something that has been underfunded or not even funded at all since COVID times, like, or prior to that, when we were obsessed with scale and SaaS and like growing, needing learning programs that would, you could roll out to 10,000 employees. Like, I never believed in that. And so I think DIY teams out there, are looking for an edge. And so what's one thing they could steal from how you approach learning? Or more specifically, like, how your facilitators show up and lead sessions? Like, what's one thing that they could all take from like what you do today?
Yeah. No, so the first thing, you already mentioned earlier on, I would say come to Culture Club, because it is really a mini workshop session, and it's going to give folks an opportunity to really see a lot of our facilitation skills and talent skills in action. So I would definitely recommend that. Now, in terms of like practical tips, one of the tools that we teach at LifeLabs, we call it the Q step. So from all of the work that so many different organizations have done on like what makes managers effective, one thing really stands out, and that is they ask way more questions than the average manager, right? So Q stepping just means step into questions, like challenge yourself to ask 2 or 3 or 4 more questions before you jump into either advice mode or before you feel like you've made up your mind about what the issue may be. Because in those extra questions, that's when you might get to truly the core of either the problem or what the obstacles might be for that person. And then one super exciting thing to actually say is that LifeLabs is launching an exciting pilot program this year designed to license our content and to equip trainers with all of the unique secret sauce of all of our facilitation skills. So we're going to have this available in 2026, but we are also working a lot on train the trainer. So if all of the DIY folks out there are interested, please reach out to LifeLabs, because you could be part of our beta on that as well.
So you mentioned Culture Club, show up to Culture Club. You talked about the Q step, and then you referenced the what did you call it? The
train the trainer.
Train the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little preview of what some of the secret sauce is for the facilitators? Like, if you had to pick one thing, like what's the one thing that you think the facilitators do that just makes the learning stick? Like, what's making it stick for people?
There is a difference. I'll say it again. Like, I feel like you are the standard for these virtual sessions, and it all comes in my experience, those types of sessions all come back to the facilitator, and they're phenomenal. Your facilitators are phenomenal. So hopefully you're able to share a cheat code with us.
Yeah, no, I will try. Though I was going to say, it is hard to pinpoint it to just one thing. Like, we take immense pride in really having the world's best facilitators, and we see it as a craft, and we continually hone it, right? So what is the difference? And actually, I'll tell you what, like, in the past, we had tried to do a train the trainer program, and it wasn't as successful because it was hard to build all of the virtuous cycle situations that happen at LifeLabs, because it starts with even the hiring and onboarding, right? Like, we have to find folks who truly have a penchant and a passion for creating spaces that are open, and have the courage to role model for folks like how to actually have the difficult conversations, and have a passion for making others learn and transmitting ideas. So it starts there. And folks have often asked me, they're like, Priscila, what's the background of a facilitator that's really successful at LifeLabs? And it spans the gamut. We have everything from improv actors to business practitioners to psychologists to PhD folks. So it really varies. But what they all have in common is this sense of like curiosity and openness and empathy to really make the space and respond in the moment in a way that's going to be really courageous. We also do a ton of work to make the learning itself really intentional. So here's something that every LifeLabs experience takes into account, right? Human attention spans, particularly adult ones, are short, and we keep fooling ourselves thinking it's very long. It is not very long. So every 7 to 12 minutes, there's a moment of reflection, interaction, play, participation, such that intentionally you can keep that feeling of energy kind of like going throughout. There's also, even as we were describing, like there's this element of energy, like all of our facilitators are really ensuring that they can be the, helping be the barometer of what's happening in the session so that they know when to flex towards more energy versus when folks are in a reflective mode and when to pull back a little bit. And there's a lot of that adaptability that comes with a million reps, right? And kind of knowing how do I read the room and what's going to be most intentional. But then we also make sure that the experience feels inclusive. So you always want to make sure that if you're going to have a room of live participants, that there's opportunity for all of them to participate, because that's what's most exciting. Is if you're getting into the core of something, you want to feel like your voice matters and that you have some space in that session as well. And so our facilitators are really good at creating that for folks.
And so you've been a client, and clearly it had such a big impact on you that you wanted to work with them. Do you still remember going through that experience and there being like this moment where you had the aha moment and you're like, oh, like this is what you said. It's information that I should have gotten my MBA, but I didn't get for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What's something that has stuck with you since those days?
Oh, 100%. I think that, part of it is what I was, calling earlier, what I call these aha moments. And there are kind of like various ones. It can be as little as sometimes being confronted, but really not just with knowing that the average manager asks, many more questions, but then seeing someone role model to me, what would it look like to actually ask another question and another question and another question and another question. And you're like, holy cannoli, I thought I was good at this, but then you're like, actually, I am not very good at that. In other occasions, it may be the sense of something that you may have been instinctually doing, but you had no vocabulary for it. And you couldn't actually coordinate with your team to go, look, when we see this, this is what's happening. And so there were so many instances of being able to actually label, for example, why is it that sometimes meetings feel like they go off the rails, or that we spent a bunch of time on them and we actually didn't actually accomplish the things that we wanted to do. It felt like it was going to be such impactful time, but then it wasn't. Well, we have a tool called the 4 Ps, where we basically say, okay, is everybody clear even before they walk into the room? What is the purpose? What is the product? What is the personal benefit for me, to have this situation? So that, and like, these are small tweaks that feel sometimes like once they've been put in front of you, you're like, wow, that makes so much sense. But in practice, they can oftentimes be relegated to all of the other things that feel really urgent. And that lack of preparation can really interfere kind of like in the moment with what's happening. Does that answer your question, Daniel?
Sorry, it took me a second to come off mic. Yes, that answers my question.
And so I want to, we could keep going and going and going and going on down the path we've been on. And so I want to mix it up a little bit, because the second segment that we had lined up was literally an obsession of mine, Priscilla. Like I am not overstating this when I say, or exaggerating when I say, like, there was a year and a half and I could not stop talking about middle management and a crisis. I described it as a crisis at the time. And the general thesis was we're promoting this org design and this way of company growth that is failing our middle managers. And we have been. On top of that, we had been through a pandemic, and like we were asking that the level of responsibility as it relates to what some would have termed back in our banking days as the soft skills was critically missing. So, you know, there was a point where you would have, as a manager, you were having to, you know, assess kind of the work environment, the way people, you know, are responding to the current dynamics that were happening in the work environment. And obviously things have changed. The uncertainty hasn't changed. I think if anything now, there are other factors and drivers that are creating the uncertainty. AI being a huge part of that. But, you know, for like a year and a half, maybe longer, like I just couldn't let this go. And now it's like we're in this bizarro world where it was like we went from like, oh, middle managers, you guys are responsible literally for everything. You need to go to Workday and approve these things because HR shouldn't have to do it. And oh, you also need to be, you know, a macroeconomic expert, blah, 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 blah. Now we're saying, do we even need middle management? And now like the pendulum has swung in a totally different direction. And it's like, oh, AI now, like, do we even need middle managers? And so like, what's your take? I'm just curious on like what your take is. And, you know, where do you see things going for middle management?
Yeah, I'm with you that it's such a fascinating question. And luckily, like for us, you know, Google asked it twice in the 2000s so far. And in both times, so in 2002 and then in 2008, when they were basically asking that question, you know, do we need managers at all? You know, the answer was an unequivocal yes, both times. And I think that, you know, the factors that really, again, made managers effective and made managers necessary not only have not changed, but in my perspective, are actually going to intensify with the world of AI. Because as we were talking about earlier, you know, the challenge has never been just the delivery of whatever output you want to see, but it's really in the alignment of the choices that we will make, right? For folks who are in smaller organizations or in startups, like you always know that the value is not in just the things you say yes to, but the things you say no to. And this is the type of skill that now is going to become even more necessary in a world of AI, because guess what, Stephen? Now you have access to a whole set of additional skills that, you know, previously you didn't. So the question of like, should I hire an engineer is no longer, do I need to hire the engineer because I don't have engineering skills? But now it may become a question of, should I spend my time trying to do this coding because my time could be better spent on something else? Or like, so is it valuable to still hire somebody? Or no, because I have access now, let me do this thing. So in that very question, just because you can do something, should you still do something, or should someone else be doing it, is going to be a critical question that all companies are going to be wrestling with when it comes to the types of resources that you're going to have. And yes, there's a lot of experimentation that folks are doing. And I'm with you that we're not even close to understanding the frontier of what AI can and can't do. I mean, we know what it can't do today, but it keeps improving and it keeps moving. So I know that we're going to keep pushing that boundary out. But answering even those questions of like, in a world where I have a finite set of resources and a finite set of time, how am I allocating these to the most effective use? That question is still going to be one that leaders are going to have to answer and that managers are going to have to reinforce, right? Managers are really the glue that are really kind of connecting the combination of all of the work from the individual contributors to this much larger strategy that an executive team is putting forth. And I think that it would be wishful thinking for us to expect that the transition will be so seamless and that now an executive team somewhere can tell an entire team of individual contributors how to behave, and that those folks will be able to autonomously or with just the support of AI, you know, manage all of their alignment, engagement, pattern seeking, you know, miscommunications that sometimes can happen, knowing when they might be misallocating, prioritizing within a different set of skills, negotiating with other stakeholders around the org. I very much believe that no great company has been built without great managers, and that is still going to remain the case ahead.
I don't know if this is information that would be surfaced like through your sales process, or maybe it's, the beginning of a program with like a new crop of managers that are going through the training. But if I were a manager for a big company today, I feel like what would be the most painful for me is like the overwhelm of it all. It's like not only am I having to manage the 3 or 4 humans on my team and like know what's going on in their personal lives, help them get better at their job, help guide them through this AI journey, that everybody's being asked to go on. I have to figure out how to upskill myself. I'm then, managing stakeholders and, reporting up all the things that you just talked about. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, is there like one specific thing that feels the most painful for managers right now, or is it the combination of them all?
No, great question. I think that, one of the biggest tragedies of corporate America and let's say global corporations is precisely the fact that we've made managers be the next step on someone's career rung, but we did not decide to recognize and equip them with the skills that are necessary. It's the equivalent of saying that every single ball player is going to be the best coach. Not at all. Entirely different skill set, entirely different application. And if anything, a massive perspective change from I used to be the one that does this to now my job is very much not to do it myself, but instead to diagnose, support, coach, and equip other people to deliver on this. And their success is my success, no longer the other way around, right? Like, so that change is very challenging and particularly difficult. And I think that it is still the case that a lot of the pain comes precisely from not helping people to navigate how will all of those conversations even happen because it was one thing to have to do it as an individual, a peer to peer, to now having this different relationship. I think that your point around sort of also like how many activities are constantly happening is really a symptom at times of an organization not having full insight over what is the role of the manager in our team. And so whenever we are working with our clients, this is something that we're constantly calibrating on so that we can build an appropriate set of competencies that says, this is what being a manager at LifeLabs Learning means. And here are the skills that we're going to require from you. Here are the resources that we're going to give you. And we always try to do time audits so that we can all be on the same page around how long do certain things take, because that's also a very important calibration, right? Because, today I saw, someone reminding us of that missive that like work will expand to fill all available time. And I think that it's important sometimes for organizations to be on the same page and go, okay, for these types of whatever issue it may be, how much time should we be spending on it, or do we want to be spending on it? And when it gets to be more than that, or when it's feeling more pressing or more challenging, how is it that we now think about extracting the learning and coming up with a different rule, right? So at LifeLabs, for example, I often encourage my team to go, if we are talking about the same topic for the third time, we have to stop and call a timeout and now make a decision about it, right? Like we cannot sort of continue involving other people or going into different directions or just saying this continues. Like there has to be a decision. And I think that this is what organizations need to do to support their managers ever more. It's going, all right, from all of the things that are on my manager's plates today, what belongs there? And what are the kinds of things that either should be removed or where we should give them additional skills, or are things that now can be replaced with other different systems or different tools?
Do you think, excuse me, do you think the career plans and career visions of new to career or early career folks will be changing? And I'm going back to the point you made, like that was always a stop on the career journey, is like, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to put in my 3, 5, 7 years, depending on the industry. I'm going to get to manager. I'm going to put that on my resume, now LinkedIn, and like everything's going to be magical. Like based on the debate we're having, the changes that you're seeing, like, do you think that that's changing? What you're saying, managers are here and they're going to be here for a while. And I agree with that. Do you think, I guess, what we are striving for is early and new to career people, is that going to change?
I sincerely hope so. And I see lots of those paths for many industries and many functions. I also want to be clear eyed and say sometimes, like, not for every role, right? Like, there are some roles where it may be very challenging for folks to see massive progression outside of still a managerial or leadership path of some kind. But I've been a massive advocate for, like, how is it that we can create expert paths for individual contributors and folks that don't want to take on people responsibilities, but can have kind of like outsized impact on a company's results. I mean, sales has given us the best example, right? Like, in sales, you don't necessarily need to be a manager to feel like you're progressing in your career. And in some cases, the highest paid salesperson may be making more money, more cash than the CEO, because they are bringing tremendous kind of like value to the organization outside of having to be kind of a people leader. So I do think that it's a super exciting question for every company to be wrestling with, because it's back to that notion of how do you retain and grow a lot of the talent that you have. And, one path is this notion of like, how can I actually create, parallel tracks that don't necessarily require that everybody goes towards people leadership. Because let us be practical, like, there will never be as many manager jobs as there are individual contributor jobs. And so, and that's the nature of leadership in many respects. And so how can we create opportunity outside of that as well?
One last question, and I think we'll have to turn a corner to the end of the conversation because we have a couple more rituals that we need to get through. But I want to kind of combine a couple of things that we've talked about. Earlier you made the comment like, I now have this superpower of coding. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best use of my time. And in fact, some may, it's summer vacation. It's summer camp schedules. So that's why you hear some pinging, if you can hear the pinging. But the question I have is like, I know what would be involved in coding if I were to choose to take that on. I actually know what that is like because I have done it. How are managers going to make these decisions? Like, how are they first going to find time to even understand what would be involved for me to take on this skill, and make that, this is part of the scope of what I'm going to do versus this is part of the scope of what we're going to design my team to do. Like, do you feel like we have a looming kind of reskilling issue on our hands where, like, how am I going to do the work to keep the car moving, but yet also put myself in a position as a manager to make some of these judgment calls that other managers seem to be able to make, or maybe new managers are going to be, let's fast forward a few years from now when there's even broader adoption. So I'm just curious, what is looming ahead from that perspective, and how do you see organizations and specifically managers like working through that for themselves?
Yeah. Well, so if I take a step back, I think of a lot of those questions as, and another tool that we often talk about at LifeLabs is called 3 lenses, right? So if you're faced with a challenge or issue or question, how are you thinking about it from a personal perspective, from an interpersonal or team perspective, and then from an organizational perspective, right? So if we come back to the questions that you're asking, like, initially it is that sense of like, is this a skills or time issue that is restricted to the individual? So that would be question number 1. Then if we were to move to kind of like team, the question then becomes, is this a skills or time issue that is impacting the team? Or if the team does have the skills and the time, where's the competitive advantage for where that time and skills should be spent, right? And because as we said, yes, there's the sense of like, now Steven's engineering skills are available, but what is the opportunity cost of Steven's engineering skills time versus the opportunity cost of engineer Mike's opportunity cost, knowing that he can now, so Steven plus tools is still less than Mike plus tools in many ways, though Steven can also do it, which is exciting. And then on our organizational level is back to this idea of like, where are we going to make those investments? What is the direction that we want to go? And do we have, sufficient input internally to kind of get learning with the data set that we just have here? Or is this the time when we're going to be looking at industry benchmarking and other best practices? Or are we going to have to get, help from the outside? But I think that the moral of the story in all cases is that, and what you were hinting at is, learning is going to be the skill of the future, right? So there will be no chance, because like none of us knows what the edge or the frontier it's going to be. Reinvention and super learning, and like how quickly can you learn, how accelerated are your cycles of asking some of these questions so that you can get to the best investment. And this is another reason why managers are going to be so important, is that I expect that the pace of change is going to accelerate also. So how do you actually get people through that change curve and get everybody, you know what, we were going this direction, but the market has changed, the facts have changed. It's now time for us to pivot and to go shift to over here. And managers can be a terrific resource to really champion, role model, and support getting folks in this new trajectory as well.
So before we go into rapid fire questions, I want to come back to a couple of resources that you mentioned. So you mentioned Culture Club and you mentioned Train the Trainer. Where can people go to find these?
Oh my goodness. So if they come to our website, there's an entire section on events, and they can register for a number of free events there. And we also have tools and resources, including tons of playbooks that have lots of very practical templates and other guides that you can use to solve lots of problems right there. So visit lifelabslearning.com for a lot of those tools. We pride ourselves in being what we call generous wild scientists. And so we want to give lots of value to folks because building the future of work is something that's really near and dear to our heart.
Y'all have some of the most loyal customers, and I'm going to call them fans because I can't think of a better word to use than fans. Like, they're, in some cases, they're not even customers, but they're like, they go to Culture Club every other week or every week. And yeah, so whatever y'all are doing, people love it. Like, people love this stuff, including Steven. And Train the Trainer, you said, would actually be 2026, right? So they have to wait a little bit for that one. Okay.
Yes, but if you're interested, drop us a word and we'll keep you on the list for some beta or early access.
Perfect. And on that note, we have to go into rapid fire questions, sadly. I feel like, we say this every episode, but this could have been a 2-hour episode. So question 1 of rapid fire. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody starting in HR today?
So I would say focus on making things practical, not just aspirational. I think that in a lot of cases, we want to carve out excess time or different systems for a lot of HR processes. And the more you can embed them into the day-to-day work of the business, the easier it's going to be to get tons of adoption. And also, I would say, get the people in your team to actually be advocates and co-create a lot of that stuff with you. Like, it can be hard sometimes when you're in HR and feeling like you're alone or pulling this boulder up a hill. But I do think that there's lots of more opportunity to either crowdsource or open up or ask the team for help or throw the problems out to the organization and get a lot of buy-in, even from just an IKEA effect.
Next rapid fire question. If your team gave you a superpower nickname, what would it be?
Okay. Well, so I think that I definitely can't sit in ambiguity for long, or I want to understand what people are talking about when they're throwing words at me. So the deblur comes to mind. But if I'm having a lot of fun with this question, I've been called the cheetah because I get to the core of the issue fast.
The cheetah.
Will you tell me whether that is true or not?
I love.
I don't know which one I like better, honestly. I kind of like the what was the first one you said?
The deblur.
The deblur. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, what a superpower. I'm like picturing that in a movie. Okay, next question. If you could steal one strategy from another company, what would it be?
Oh, I would say disagree and commit is a strategic principle that we often talk about internally at LifeLabs, and I think Amazon got that one right.
They got a lot of things right, but yeah, that's a great one. Last question. If there's someone that is just like pushing the bounds of our space, the people space, HR, that just like absolutely needs to be showcased, who is that? Who do we need to have on the show next?
Yeah, no. So Julia Villagra, who's now the chief people officer at OpenAI, was on our client advisory board and was a client of LifeLabs. And I would say that would be a great guest for you to have.
Get out of here. That would be so like now I have this. This is my new dream guest. Like Daniel and I built this business MPL on the back of ChatGPT. So that would just be such a pinch me kind of moment if we could get her. I love it. I think that's a great one.
There we go.
Final tradition of the show is one word or phrase close. So anything that's coming to mind right now.
All right. I would say the future is human.
Ooh. The future is human. I love that. I'm going to go with, because this has just been, I came in hot at the beginning. I'm going with Culture Club. Y'all seriously don't sleep on Culture Club. It's really my favorite virtual series out there. We don't, as a content person, I don't have the luxury a lot of time to join these sorts of things, but Culture Club's like the one that if I can squeeze it in, I'm going to join it. So Culture Club.
Great. Thank you.
I'm going to say ask more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like today was a good reminder through some of your tips that you gave that you don't always have to go into solutioning mode. And sometimes it's more
so hard to not go into solutioning mode, honestly.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to ask the 1,000 questions and be the deblur.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Or the Q is it Q stepping? That's the other yeah. Q stepping. Love it. Well, Priscilla, this has been an absolute joy. Best possible way we could kick off our week. So thank you for carving out time to chat with us.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great week.
All right.
Bye, Priscilla.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Well. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.